Real quick, before we get into the show, I wanted to share a new service called Getita that Ken and I have been using that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome back to the Firing the Man podcast, a show where we bring you the real story, strategies, and insights from entrepreneurs who have taken control of their own destiny. Today, we have a powerhouse of a guest joining us, Lance Cayco. Lance is an architect, entrepreneur, and educator who, along with his business partner, Alex Gore, co-founded F9 Productions, a top-tier design build firm in Longmont, Colorado. With a background spanning architecture, construction, and business, Lance has been at the forefront of creating innovative, high-quality designs in both residential and commercial spaces. Beyond running a successful firm, Lance is deeply committed to sustainability as the president of Longmont Community Gardens, promoting green initiatives and community engagement. He also co-hosts Inside the Firm podcast, where he shares hard-earned lessons on scaling architecture firms, entrepreneurship, and navigating the business world. In today's episode, we dive into Lance's journey from building a thriving architecture firm to his passion for business, community, and sustainability. If you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or someone looking to fire the man and build something of your own, this is an episode you will not want to miss. Let's get into it. Lance, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, David.
Absolutely. So to start things off, can you share with the audience your transition from architecture and building to a thriving design build firm?
Yeah, I'm 42. My story starts when I was 13, growing up in Northwest North Dakota. I grew up between a sugar beet farm and a cattle ranch. And on the sugar beet farm, when I went out to go get my first real job, which was like working with my dad, irrigating sugar beets. And I lasted about a week. He and I just didn't get along. And I said I had a replacement even ready to, like, my best friend Chris I was like, hey Dad, I'm not going to do this anymore. I don't like it. It's not for me. But Chris was happy to take my job. Chris took my job, and my dad was like, well, you got to do something. I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, I want money for school clothes because Dad wouldn't buy me the cool Jordans and stuff like that. So I called his best friend up, who was a general contractor. His name is Bruce. Asked him for a job, and I said, I'll do anything. And he goes, well, you can be my gopher. And I was like, cool. And he was like, yeah, I'll pay $7.25 an hour. And I was like, what's a gopher? And he goes, oh, when you're going to go for this, go for that. When you're done going for the things, then you can get on the roof with the big boys and learn how to roof. And I was the best dang gopher he ever had. I just instantly fell in love with the whole industry right away. I love the camaraderie. I love even cat calling, just kind of get that environment. It was just rough, gruff guys. And I was a skinny 13-year-old kid, and I wanted to get muscles. And it was hard. It was real hard work, but it was so rewarding because you got to see the roof taken off in the morning, put it back on the next day. About halfway through the summer, Bruce saw something in me that he didn't see in maybe anybody else that he ever hired before. And I think it was just enthusiasm and actually loving the job and being curious about everything. And he says, so he pulled me aside one day and he goes, I pay you $7.25 an hour. What do you think I charge the customers? And I go, $7.25 an hour. And he laughed and he laughed. And I was like, I was kind of embarrassed. And he goes, no. And then he explained how service-based businesses work, right? Especially if you're employing people. There's usually a 2 or 3 or 4x factor. If I pay you, for example, he would go, I pay them, I'm charging the customer 2 or 3, 4 times what I pay you per hour. And I go, well, why? That seems, are you ripping them off? And he goes, no. This is this. And he explained profit, overhead, downtime, going after work. he explained everything to me, and I just completely transformed my brain that day. And then I had another epiphany, and the sister epiphany to that was I had the like rich dad, poor dad experience without even knowing who Robert Kiyosaki was. And I only read the book maybe about 10 years ago. But after I read the book, I went, oh my gosh, I had the rich dad, poor dad experience. Because Bruce had almost no anxiety when it came to money. And that's all my mother and father had was anxiety. And, you know, they had a cope even when I was growing up. And it was having money. They would say having money isn't everything. And I hated that. I just hated hearing that. I was like, what a cope. Like, so that's how you're going to live your life? And then my favorite rapper about 10 years ago, Kanye West finished the sentence for me. And he goes, having money isn't everything, not having it is. And I was like, that's what I've been waiting for. Like, I thank you. And so I go, well, I said, well, Bruce, how do I, at the end of the summer, I was like, how do I become you? Like, how do I become a general contractor? And he goes, and it was one of the probably bravest things maybe the guy's ever said. Like, it was such a beautifully confident thing to say. Because I even think about it as me as an employer to say what he said, which was, well, you don't work for me next summer. You go work for somebody else. And then you work for somebody else and work for somebody else. You need to learn all the different trades so you can be a general contractor. And he knew how good of a worker I was too. So for him to say that was like, what a fatherly moment. I mean, that's just like, thought it was so beautiful in hindsight. So that's what I did. From 13 to 21, I wanted to be a builder first. So I worked all those different trades, went to tech school for building construction technology in Wahpeton, North Dakota. And by the end when I went to tech school, it was like the first time I ever liked school. And all of a sudden I had a choice of what I wanted to do. And I was getting straight A's and getting all these scholarships and like monetizing going to school. It was amazing. So I get to the end of my stint there, my 2-year stint, and our capstone project was we had to build a house with our team. And I started looking at the blueprints, and I was like, why did the architect like draw it like this? And then another light bulb went off, and it was probably the biggest one of my life. And it was, oh my gosh, what if I became an architect first? If I became an architect, I would get the clients first, and then I could fold them into building clients. Like I would make money 2 times, you know? And then I didn't even think about real estate development until college. And then that was like sort of a third light bulb. I was like, once I got into architecture school and finished that, I was like, well, shouldn't I be a developer too? So that's what's kind of led me to be this serial entrepreneur and trying to have a vertically integrated design, build, and ultimately develop firm. And that's why we do what we do.
Outstanding. So you go to tech school, you go to college, and then what comes next after that?
Oh, big letdown, big layoff. Yeah. So graduated at the top of my class in architecture school. I won the Peter F. McKinsey Award at North Dakota State, which is, it basically says you are the top graduating student with a master's degree and you have the best thesis and all this stuff. So I was just like cloud 9. I was even being recruited by MIT. I declined to go to MIT because I was like, one of my professors like, you got to go practice. Otherwise, you're just going to be an academic your whole life. And I know that's not what you don't want to do, Lance. Like you want to be this trifecta thing. So I applied to jobs in Oregon. I applied to jobs in Montana, and I applied to jobs in Colorado because I just wanted to be in the Rocky Mountain region. The mountains are like my calling, and fishing and all the other outdoor stuff I do. And so I got one interview in Oregon. It went okay. They didn't hire. No interviews in Montana. I had 7 in Colorado. So my fiance at the time and we left Fargo on that spring break to come out and do all the interviews. It was 70 below when we left Fargo, North Dakota with the wind chill. And then it was 70 above in Colorado. And this was like March, like kind of right now. And I stayed with my aunt, and I was like, how come you guys haven't told us about this weather? And they're like, that's the secret of the whole thing. So I interviewed all over the state, Aspen, Denver, Boulder, all over the whole state. And we got an offer in Aspen. My wife said no at the time. I'm glad she did too. She's like, we're not raising kids in Aspen. I was like, that's totally fair. And then, there was a firm I really liked in Boulder that I landed with. And I didn't get a job right away, actually. I graduated, and I had to keep pestering them, and I finally got a job in like October of 2008. But it only lasted 9 months, because if any of I'm sure your listeners are savvy to the extent that they remember the Great Recession. And that's exactly what happened. So I lasted about 9 months. The Great Recession hit. 50% of architects, engineers, contractors were laid off during that time. It was just completely devastating to one of the biggest industries in America, right? Home building or just building in general. And I was laid off by these two guys that I just really learned a lot of lessons from because they were just awful business owners. So that's when I decided to fire the man, is when I was so hurt and dejected. I just never wanted to put myself in the position of being vulnerable like that again with my employment, especially with my children relying on me, my wife relying on me. I just vowed from that day, like, not only am I going to never have to lay myself off again, but I've had F9 Productions for 15 years and we've had no layoffs because we're positive reactionaries in the way we've built our business compared to how those guys built their business, which, by the way, is now defunct, like completely. They fell apart. So
one thing I want to call out about your response, which I really, really like, was the people that were employing you, I'm paraphrasing, were great examples of not how to run a business. And I think when people think about role models, they often think of positive role models, which are important. But I would argue that negative role models, or people that show you the path not to take, are equally as important. And so what have been some of those, as you've started F9 and have been successfully running it, what have been some of those lessons that you've brought with you?
Number one is just pick up the phone. And don't be, actually, I would say this, let me back up. Number one is don't be afraid to actually lean into the fact that having an architecture firm is a business. I really can't emphasize that enough, that like there's so many architects out there that insist on it being much more of an art than a business, right? And and it's all focused on the design and what they can do design wise, what's going to be pretty, what's going to look good, what's going to make them look good. And it might not even be functional, right? Of what they're designing for their folks. They're so focused on that, they don't focus on customer service almost whatsoever. So one of the things that I noticed right away in reaction to not only having been employed by those guys, but then, freelancing for some other architects. And then once we started our business, just hearing the reaction of the public, like they would send us an email, they would find us online or something. We used to actually use Craigslist to advertise. It was fantastic, believe it or not. Especially during the Great Recession when people are looking for deals, and we were like, hey, as long as we figure out how to still make money and give them a quote unquote deal compared to the next one, where's the harm here? And the reaction we would get when it was so crazy, David. They would call us or email us, and let's say we missed the call or we missed the email. It was like, we always made a rule, is like, get back to them within 1 hour. If that's not possible, 24 hours or less. And we usually do the 1 hour within 1 hour or almost immediately. And it was overwhelmingly over and over again. It was like, oh my God, thank you for calling me back. You're like the 15th architect I've called and nobody will answer the phone. So honestly, this is the most fundamental thing you would think of. So I'm just like so grateful for all those architects that are still doing a really, really bad job of just picking up the phone, responding to the text, responding to the email. And like, what a layup for me. I really live and die by this, the law of polarity, where it's like, there's a negative thing that's going to happen in your life or that you see happening in the environment you are. And in order to balance that out, there has to be a positive. Like, it's an actual law of physics, right? So I'm always looking for those kind of openings, especially when we first formed F9. And how can we be positive reactionaries to all that negative stuff that ended up getting us laid off and ending up having us firing the firm? And one of the ways we do that is we have these 9 foundational principles. Be brilliant at the basics, model it like it gets built, training is a force multiplier, communicate is our 4th one, serve the client, the contractor, the city, take extreme ownership, build the world, deliver valuable to be valuable, and then have fun is the last one. But you didn't even hear the word design there, right? You didn't hear the word like architect. Like, it's all about customer service.
I like it. So who does F9, like, what would a typical client look like?
Your typical, we actually have a pretty good range of clients. we have a lot of first-time folks that are like going to build their house for their first time, do their first addition. A lot of first-time developers, a lot of first-time business owners who are opening up that first cake shop, their first dog accessories shop or something like that. And we really like those kind of clients. They end up being repeat clients after a while. But we like those clients because we're young, energetic, we're fun, and we try to be the best listeners we can. I mean, 90% of the first sales meetings that I have with a meet and greet with a potential client, 95% of the meeting is me just listening, taking notes, being empathetic, and trying to understand how we can solve their problems. And at the very, very end is the only time I ever start talking about us. And it's like, but I am phrasing it in a way of like, here's how we can help you. I've listened to everything, and here's how we can make that sort of thing happen. We do have some veteran developers for sure that are hire us to do pretty big, substantial developments. Right now, there's a 75 townhome project, multifamily project in the town we are headquartered in that we're working on right now. We're about halfway through the design process, but that's kind of the usual mix of who we're working with.
Okay, now put yourself in the shoes of, it was Bruce, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you've now become a Bruce, and envision a young Lance comes in and is interested in starting an architecture firm. What would be some guiding principles or things that you would share with a young Lance based on your experiences of building and scaling F9?
If you can't sell, you might not you shouldn't even try to do this, because it's such a critical part. It's like my business partner and I, that is the majority of our job is out there. We're out there prospecting. I'm doing media interviews like this. I'm talking to the local newspapers. I was just on the phone with the New York Times about 2 or 3 hours ago. And we're always looking for inroads about how we can get our name out there, how we can get in front of people, how we can help people. And especially in an environment right now, which the economy is pretty flat, I will tell you. It's not hot anymore like it was when they printed all the money during COVID, and everybody had money and everybody could build and everybody wanted to stay at home, and they all needed these home offices or whatever, or they're moving from the coast inland and, making all that kind of stuff happen. Like the multifamily sector is pretty dead. So right now, like it is so critical to it when you get that inquiry, still follow that original idea that we had where it's like, I need to get back with this person immediately. It doesn't matter how small the project is. If it's a project that will still pay the bills for us right now, where we're kind of scrapping through things and trying to still not lay people off, then it's really important that they feel all those customers, no matter how small they are, like they feel like the number one. They feel like they're our number one customer. They feel like they're treated like kings and queens. And, that's why we have so many 5-star reviews on Google. So that would be I never heard any talk about being a good salesman or good saleswoman or salesperson in college. And it's so important. And I think everybody can learn it, but there has to be like a burning desire too in your belly. And that's why I tell people all the time, like I just posted this on LinkedIn the other day. I was like, there's 3 times, there's people ask me all the time, like, when's the best time to start a business? And I go, Great Depression. They're like, what? I'm like, why not? Well, you started ours in the Great Recession. It put us in a corner of a corner of a corner. We were super hungry every day. We had to move forward. There was no option of failure. It forced us to be super creative, super lean, and all of that kind of stuff. So like, that's the mindset to be in, even if you start a business and you're in a good economy. You sort of have to trick yourself into that.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, through running your business, are there any systems or processes that you feel like really help with, say, communication with employees or project management, or anything that you would share with the other business owners tuning in today?
Well, here's a really nuanced, weird one that I brought up the other day on a different show too. And somebody asked me, was it all about communication? But the reaction was like really positive. I was kind of surprised. We have a rule at F9 and F14, and that is if you're an admin person, so me or Al or 2 of the project architects, or on the construction side, the superintendent or the foreman, we know that we are very, very busy, to the point where like my day is sometimes just so stacked. It's just meeting. And I can't just take a random call. So the rule is that please text me first and say, are you available for a call? That's much more manageable, because then even if I'm talking to you right now and I'm not on my phone, but if I was checking my text, I could say, hey, I'm in a podcast. I'll hit you back in 30 minutes or something like that. So then at least they know, some kind of form of communication is coming down the pipeline. Lower level staff have to do the same thing for us as well, up to the admin level. So it's text, just sort of it's like a pre call, are you ready sort of prompt. It might sound stupidly simple, but man, it saves us so much time and anxiety, and helps people be readily available and respects their time and doesn't interrupt them. That's just been something we've developed only in the last 6 months.
I like it. I'll tell you, I deal with the same thing where my calendar will be stacked one after the other from 8 until 5, and I'll get a call midday, and when I have to call them back the next day, I would have loved to get back to them faster, but if they saw my calendar, they'd understand. Yeah. And so I like that. I like that pro tip. So, let's chat about Inside the Firm podcast. So what was kind of the origin story of starting this?
Al and I we're Gillennials is what I like to say, right? It's like kind of millennial, kind of Gen X. So we're kind of in the middle, right? We're like 1983, 1985 in that weird area. And the reason I'm saying that is because that makes us like podcast junkies. I think our generations, we're of the Joe Rogan era. Tom Green's the original, actually. I just found that out on his documentary. And, like last night I was listening to Joe Rogan. Ian Carell was on. It was fantastic. And I just look up to that stuff. I just love like storytelling and how genuine it was, and how opposite it was of just like the Fox News or MSNBC, like stupid sound bites that aren't helpful for society or our thinking or anything. So we were just huge fans, first of all. But then we got to, in 2017 is when we started it. And that had been year 7 of F9. And what happens at year 7 for any business is, usually that's when your rate of failure percentage-wise, it shrinks to, very down to like a couple percentage points. Most startups fail within the first 7 years. And so we got to year 7 and we went, oh, cool. Like, I think we're going to make it. And I really hated the rhetoric at the time of victimhood that was being perpetuated in the media about Gen X, millennials, even now Gen Z, of like, the world stacked against you and the American dream is dead. And like, you might as well just give up and get a government job. And like all of that. I just hate that. I hate that so much. I was like, we should tell our story, because then maybe there's people that will listen and be inspired. Like, if anything, I just want to give back and say, like, you can do it too. Like, I want more entrepreneurs and good capitalists out there in America. Then I want people who are just off the government dole. Like, I want people that are out there with skin in the game. Because if they have skin in the game, and especially if they end up having a family, like, that's a different America. That's the America I want to live in. So that's why we started the podcast. And we started with episode 0. It was, a short little intro. And then we just jumped into like rewinding time as if we were recording it in 2010 and telling the whole story. And we really do have a garage, story. We weren't started out of a garage, but we were definitely out of my business partner's 1-bedroom apartment in his dining room. Like, that's where we started the firm. And now I'm sitting in our actual office building that we designed, built, and developed for ourselves. And that's why it's called Inside the Firm too, is we just said, let's just bring everybody inside the firm. Like, I don't think anybody's doing this yet. And nobody really was. There's a couple other copycat podcasts in the architecture community that are like that now, which I'm flattered by, where they're just open vests and they just tell how it works. And we were also we created it because we were reacting to most architects. It's moving in the right direction now, but most architects, especially even then, a decade and a half ago, were just so close to their vest and so worried and protectionist. I'm very much a Genesis 1:28 guy, be fruitful and multiply. So I don't believe in this, that there's not enough for everybody. It's like it seems like the more you give, the more you get, the more positive you put out, the more you attract. So that's the idea behind the podcast.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's not often that I have another podcaster on here, and so it's fun to talk about that experience. And I describe it. This is episode 266, and it's like a PhD of education, and you kind of get to pick your professors. I love it. And if you were to give me $1 million tomorrow to stop podcasting, I wouldn't take it. It's so curious, like, what's been your experiences with having your own podcast?
Well, there's ups and downs. So my experience has been mostly positive. I want to clarify too, like when we first started the show, up until about 2019, would it have been 2019? Yeah, 2019. So that would have been 2 or 3 years where we just did a Friday show, and it was just inside the firm. It was just me and Al talking shop. And, we even, when we did our real estate development, we talked about the whole thing. I mean, like there was tragedies that happened on site and everything like that. We had a huge flood and just laid everything bare. And, it was like gripping stuff, actually. Like we had like amazing letters come in from people. But then I got, we still do the Friday show, but then I added a Monday show, and it's called Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. And I have people like you on, David. I had the late great John McAfee of McAfee Software on, Spike Cohen, who was running for vice president of the Libertarian Party, like people like that. Just people I want to talk to in the business-ish world or in the business world, and that's been one of the most rewarding. A lot of authors. That's actually the Monday morning show has been the most rewarding as of late, because I'm just learning from people, and there's been so many times when I'll have like an author on that I think is going to be interesting. And sure enough, they turn out to be interesting. And they'll get like halfway through the episode and they'll go, I just bought your book on Amazon. And then the book will change my life. There's been a couple of those that have happened too. Or like one guy I had on, I'm a Catholic, and he was like, I pray the rosary every morning. And I've been thinking about doing that. And I was like, I'm going to do that too. And then it's been like 4 years in a row of me doing that almost every morning, and, just changing my life in a positive way. And then I started guesting on shows like this, because I felt like I had more to share just as sort of a public figure, and, getting to like the second 7 years of everything. So it's just been like remarkably positive, even though downloads go up and down. And it's not so much about that. I think it's about networking, getting to know people, and you just keep growing every single time you do an interview, whether it's with somebody like you or I'm hosting one, or even if it's just me and Al talking.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really cool. And we are a podcast generation. I would say we're probably around a similar age. And I caught that Tom Green documentary too. Cool. And his special, I Got a Mule, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And, it was really cool hearing like the switchboard that he had, and he was a really early adopter. And without Tom Green, there's no Joe Rogan. And
dude, I was just so reminded about how much I love that guy. And when I was watching that, I was like, oh, what? We used to do Tom Green videos, me and my buddies, it was hilarious.
Yes. Yeah. He was outstanding. So no, that's cool that we both saw that. So, let's talk about Longmont Community Gardens and share a little bit about that. And I'm particularly interested in, there are often times when you're presented with a idea that's outside of your core business, and it may be something great like a community garden, but it also can take up some time in real estate from your core focus. And so Can you talk about that venture and how that pairs up with running a business?
Yeah. I've been trying to put into the ether, what if we rephrased, instead of work-life balance, what if we aim for a work-life harmony? And it just sounds better to me, because when I hear balance, it's like an image of a scale pops up in my head, and I go, oh, I'm trading one for the other. And it's like, what about a balance? So the reason I'm starting the answer in that way is this last summer, girl I was dating, she's an architect too. She asked me one night, how would my day go? And I told her, here's my day. My day was, I came over to the office and it had some staff meetings. And then I jumped on my mountain bike with my backpack and I went and visited both my gardens and harvested vegetables. And then I went back to the house and made a salad from the garden. And then I went back to the office and then I went, and that was my day. It was like a beautiful, harmonious day. Like it was everything. And I'm an entrepreneur who's self-employed, so I can do that kind of have that kind of flexibility. But that's kind of how it's been with the garden, because I will have my architects, we volunteer some of their time to do some of the design work in leading up to going after the grant that we just got awarded last year by the USDA. It was $86,000. We were able to double the size of the community garden, actually create a whole nother community garden in town. My carpenters end up helping. We donate some of their time, and they end up helping fill the beds and make the raised beds and all that kind of good stuff. And then just all my skills, just of being an architect, a builder, a developer, somebody who's well read and written, so I can go after those grants and get them. It's actually been really seamless. It's a lot of work for sure, especially since I've been drinking water from a fire hose lately, trying to finish up the expansions as we head into gardening season. And then overall, it's always been my goal to be a good capitalist, not one that just is concentrated purely on profit for sake of profit, but like profit for sake of people too. And this was one of my ways of giving back to the community that like helped grow me and grow F9 and embraced us. And that's really what Longmont Community Gardens has sort of become. So I just, when I got approached to take over the gardens in 2020, I'd been gardening there for about 10 years. And the original nonprofit said, hey, like, how do you feel about taking over? I go, this is what I wanted the whole time, is my own nonprofit. So it just went hand in hand. And I mean, I was already primed to do it as an entrepreneur. The paperwork was easy to me. Everybody else, it was intimidating. I was like, no, I got this. So that's how it's been.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, this has been an outstanding interview. At the end of every interview, we have something called the fire round. It's 4 questions we ask every guest. Are you ready for the fire round?
Yes, sir.
Outstanding. What is your favorite book?
Marcus Aurelius's Meditations.
All right. What are your hobbies?
Fishing. I'm addicted.
Very nice. What is one thing you do not miss about working for the man?
Oh, man. Being subject to their poor decisions.
Yeah. And final question. What is one thing that sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
Discipline. Discipline equals freedom.
I like it. Cayko. Very good. Very good. Well, Lance, thank you so much for your time today and looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Thanks for having me on.
Before you go, we wanted to share a new service that Ken and I have been using called Getita that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida.com, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?